It is very rare on this channel where the quality of a bicycle really blows me away. But today, this is a video, a treat for lovers of really high quality equipment. Are we going to offer it to you, our customers? I've been going through this. I'm going to show you every single detail because the closer I looked at this, the more impressed I have become. This is a 51 Bikes SIKA. And I have to admit, when I first got it out of the box, I was a bit like, yeah, but I've been over this with a fine tooth comb, gone right inside it with the endoscope as well. I want to show you that because this thing is stunning. This video is going to have to come in a few different tiers. One, just the general build quality. Then, what the hell is it? Because, I mean, look at the shape of it. It is already an unusual type of shape and very, very light. So that's going to come later on in the video when we start talking about geometry, how it rides, etc. For now, let's just take a look at this paintwork because this is a clear coat on top of carbon. You have to be very brave to do a clear coat finish on a pre-preg frame. Things like Time and the 3T that we've seen with filament wound, resin transfer molded, etc. That's fine. They've got a nice aesthetic to them. With pre-preg, i.e. they layer it up a bit like paper mache, they normally have to put a cosmetic layer on the outside, that 4K weave that we're used to. It is very rare that you see this outside of someone that has meticulously scraped everything off and sanded it down. And you can see why, because it's not a naturally nice looking thing, because you can see layers and areas of reinforcements. So it's not always the nicest thing, but this thing is beautiful. One thing that really strikes me is it is a mirror finish. It's now got some of my finger marks all over it, but I'm going to show you some beautiful B-roll of this. Now, to get a mirror finish isn't just a case of just covering it with clear coat and polishing the clear coat. As anyone will tell you, that mirror finish starts with meticulous surface preparation. So this must have gone through some pretty fine sanding and finishing before a layer of clear coat even touched it, because it really is stunning to look like. And it's not just the frame, it is the handlebar, the fork, the seat post, for God's sake, has got the same finish as the frame. I'm gonna have to come back to that and show you some of the frame features on this. First of all, it is I want to say standard, because it is becoming more standard, 51.8mm integrated headset. I say that because that is the same as the Data DCR system, the FSA ACR system, and we are seeing these bearings more and more, hence those videos that you might have seen made with Enduro asking for them to make a 51.8, because it now seems to be more common than 52mm even. This one is actually branded 51 Bikes, but I recognize this top cap and I definitely recognize that compression bung for anyone that's got a look 765, 785, 795, and you can see the little token logo. So this headset, I am fairly positive, is made by Token. So I've measured this is 51.8, and the inside of this is only ever so slightly bigger. You are not going to be able to squeeze in a 52mm, but this is a beautiful, beautiful fit. That sits so flush. It's so nice when components are so well made, they just slot together and just feel like they're made for each other. I mean, solid fit, beautiful. And the same on the bottom, just drops in and then does not move around. There is not a hint, a ridge, a burr, anything preventing that beautiful finish. The seat post is a standard 27.2mm, big thumbs up, and they've actually finished the top area as well, where the seat clamp post is going to go. This is the seat clamp post again, another beautifully made CNC'd machined aluminium. And look at that, it just slots together so perfectly. Love that. The bottom bracket is a T47 internal. Now, I have talked about this on the channel a lot. Now, this has got the same system as we're starting to see on Factors and Treks and Specialized SL8s, although they use a BSA, where it's a very small part of thread bonded in independently left and right. So unlike the Look bikes where they have a big tube of aluminium that bonds in the whole way, this is two independent sides. So there's a lot of opportunity here for misalignment to occur. Whereas when you have one big tube, you can bond the whole thing in. And also they resist the torsional forces. If a bearing seizes up, you've got some extra reinforcement there. Whereas here, you've only got the bond independently on each side. But I'm going to show you in a second how good this looks, because they have really reinforced this. At the back here, we have a SRAM UDH making up the rear derailleur hanger as well. And look at this, the brake mounts are both elevated away from the seat stay. So if there are any problems with this, we can get tools on that and fix it. Looking at the surface finish on this, I can't imagine any problems with that at all. So at this point in the video, you might be wondering, who on earth is 51 Bikes? I've never heard of them before. Well, they're an Irish company headed up by a man called Aidan Duff, who was an ex-pro rider around the late 90s, early 2000s. Lots and lots of experience. And that company was really set up about making one-off custom geometry carbon frames, normally the domain of steel and aluminium frame builders. And there are very few companies that are actually doing custom geometry in carbon. And they also do some amazing custom paint options as well. You go and check out their website, absolutely beautiful. So the Sika then was really born out of that idea, but trying to bring that quality, that individualism to a much more affordable price point. Okay, it's still expensive and still very high quality, but it's not completely one-off. These frames are a little bit more mass produced in Taiwan, but still finished to a very high level, as you've seen. Now you know, go check them out on the website. You'll find those links down below. But now I think it's time that I get the endoscope and show you the inside of this. First thing I want to show you is what we talked about here. This is the inside of the bottom bracket. Now you look at this finishing here. Every single part of this is finished here on the inside and properly reinforced. Let's take a look down the down tube. So what we are looking for is the lack of any tents, ridges, inconsistencies, blobs of resin that might be in there, any sort of detritus left over from the manufacturing process. And look at this, this is super, super clean. We are just coming up here on one of the riv nuts. Now these riv nuts, you probably can't see on this one, I'm going to show you on the handlebar, that these riv nuts have been coated. They're not just a straightforward aluminium, they've actually been coated, which is amazing to see. So this is super clean. But probably the worst part of this frame that I found is if we just go down the brake hole here. So this is the inside of the chainstay now. Now this is normally the worst part of most bikes, but look how clean that is. This little lump of sort of organic looking blob is glue that they've used to bond two parts of the frame together. So somewhere around here, this bottom bracket section has been made separately and this part of the frame has been bonded and glued on. So you can see here where that glue is, a good amount of glue. And then just on the other side is the slightest little glimpse of what I'd consider a normal quality. And you start seeing this sort of scale. This is something left over from the manufacturing process, that sort of releasing agent that allows it to be released from the mold. But then after that, we're straight back into nice clean carbon again. So I don't know how that got in there, but that is the only evidence I found. But this sort of stuff is common all over most bikes. While we're up here, I just want to show you inside of this headset area, because look how clean that is. That is beautiful. I love seeing where all the reinforcements are as well. Only part of this frame that even looks remotely tatty is just around the exit hole here for the front Mech cables. Is you can see where a slight sort of square of 4K weave has been put on top to reinforce this area here, and it's not perfectly lined up, but that's it. That's the only thing that looks even slightly astray on this beautiful frame. The brake mounts, etc., all look fantastic. All these surface prep areas completely free of paint and been finished. You can tell that someone's gone in there and finished it, not just masked off and the masking paper removed. This has actually been finished by someone and checked it. You can tell because there's little marks where someone's either sanded something off or scraped a bit of masking tape off. This is not just a mask it off, take it off again job. So this is the fork, and you can already tell there's something slightly unusual about it by the rake of the fork, and I'm going to come on to that when we talk about the geometry. But first of all, wool consistency around here is fantastic. This is measuring consistent wool thickness the whole way around. This is 2.5, 2.49, you know, absolutely beautiful. Quick check of the bearing seat. Remember, this should sit completely square, and there shouldn't be any burrs or ridges that allow the bearing to rock. And then taking a look with our endoscope, let me just turn this on to record again. So, and mechanics, you're gonna love this. So if we go through the cable exit hole straight out the other side, yep, it is one consistent tube. And if we put the endoscope down here, you can see how that is made. There is that completely rigid tube running down the inside. And if we take this on a little journey down one of the fork legs, there we go, look at that. Even the inside of the fork is beautiful and clean. And here's that little bonding, that glue at the end where the last section is bonded on. Brake mounts here. This top one here is getting a bit close to the paintwork. I would like that if that was a little bit elevated, but I think when you get a break on there, it's going to look super clean. But these are, I mean, they're beautifully smooth. I can run my finger on that and it feels like those have been sanded down. And then again, in here, absolutely superb. All the threads super clean. The axles they come with actually are aluminium axles, but with a steel washer at one end. And I love the fact it tells you exactly what it is. So 122 millimeters long, length 50 millimeters on an M12 by 1 millimeter thread pitch on there. And that thread is clean as a whistle. So what I do like about this is it has a 6 millimeter hex on both sides. So there's a 6 millimeter hex on this side and a 6 millimeter hex on this side. In case you ever do have one of those ham-fisted moments, you've got two ways of removing your axle. Now, handlebars is something that FiftyOne Bikes is taking pretty seriously. They're all about the ergonomics, and this handlebar shape you can already see is something fairly unique. I've actually asked them for the 38 centimeter wide and the 100 millimeter stem, but when you buy the bike, you can specify this however you want. It's not like most bikes where you get what you get given, then you have to go buy other things to get the size you want. Anyway, what's going on here is you can see there's a little bit of a back sweep. This part of the handlebar tilts in ever so slightly and then flares, but in a slightly contoured way. I'm looking forward to getting a lever on here, but I'm expecting a lovely smooth transition out of here, and this should give me plenty of space for my wrist. Again, the build quality on this is stunning. Even just like this little top cap just fits perfectly in that gap. And again, I want to show you the inside of this because there's some really quite stunning features. It looks really, really messy, but these are the riv nuts used to hold it in this little plate here. Now, handlebars get very sweaty and they're normally the first bit that gets covered in muck as well. So if you've ever had like a Pinrallo most handlebar, you've probably experienced these riv nuts just disintegrating. What this is you're looking at is actually a surface preparation to stop them rusting. It might be another layer of glue or something, I don't know, but that is just another layer of protection to stop those corroding quite so easily and shifting around. There we go, we've got a lovely clear image down the handlebar there. Again, a part of the bike that is notoriously badly finished on the inside because it's so hard to get access to it, and you'll quite often find all sorts of mess and detritus and stuff left over from the manufacturing process. I mean, it's not necessarily a big problem, but it is just adds weight. So this coming up here, we can see this blob. So this looks like this is being glued on here. So it's very much of a two-piece construction where somewhere around here there's a join. So this is the seat post. Even the seat post has been finished. I mean, the amount of craftsmanship that's gone into this to make sure everything is smooth is insane. There's another piece to go in here, which is the raw carbon. This is a raw carbon finish. They probably need that for the friction between the two surfaces. I know this is the bit you've been waiting for. Let's get some weights on this because I'm seriously impressed by this. I mean, the moment I picked this up out of the box, I was not expecting it to be as light as this. Remember, this is like an endurance spec frame, really. So this is the frame. It's got the Mech hanger on. It's got a bottle K bounce, front Mech mount. That is 845 grams. That's for a size large. That is seriously impressive. And our handlebar set here, 350 grams. Let's quickly put this together as a frame set and see what the frame set comes out as. So that is everything you need to make this frame complete and everything that comes in the box. You do get a whole bunch of headset spaces as well, but let's get onto that later. So the entire weight of everything you see there, 1.87 kilograms. Okay, other little things that come in the box. One, you actually get a bottom bracket when you buy this. Now, when I ordered this, I did ask for a Shimano bottom bracket and that's what they sent, but I'm actually gonna fit SRAM, I'll show you that in a second. But you get a nicely made aluminium bottom bracket with some ceramic bearings. I am not sure of the brand, being completely honest, with a yellow seal. That's okay, this is made by Otimo Bike, something I've not come across before, but I'm gonna go and look them up and I'll add some details to that later. You get a whole load of headset spacers, 1 centimeter and 5 millimeter spacers. Now, I'm making a big deal about that because actually 5 millimeter spacers is actually becoming quite rare. More and more brands are ditching the 5 millimeter spacer. So in fact, they've included 2 of them in here and 3 centimeters. So you've got 4 centimeters worth of spacers to play with if you want to. We have a whole load of frame bungs here. So if you want to run cables, actually manual operated gears. You can do that. I think with that handlebar setup, I really wouldn't recommend it. But there's also in here the Di2 cable bungs as well, and there's a complete blanking bung as well. And you get a little Garmin mount here, which has got Garmin, Wahoo and Brighton, I think all built in. Good solid aluminium mount. So I've been thinking, how do I build this into something really stunning, something that's going to really do this frame justice? See, I wanted to do something a little bit unusual, something quirky, because this is a little bit of an unusual and quirky bike. It is an endurance bike. It's a bike that's made for exploring the mountains. So we want something that's really confidence inspiring downhill, lovely and light on the uphills with some beautiful low gearing for those long days. So I've gone something a little bit controversial. We're going for a SRAM Force One by setup, but we're not sticking with the SRAM Force chainrings. We're going to keep those lovely carbon cranks, which I think actually the Force with that sort of silver hologram logo is going to suit this beautifully. The ratio components, this is the 46 tooth chainring, all CNC'd aluminium. I think that's going to look dead smart on there. And we have gone for the SRAM Force Explore rear mech, but with a ratio components rear cage on there. So we're going to be able to run up to a 46 tooth rear cassette. And I love that whole silver anodized rear cage on there as well. I think that's going to look great with this setup. And then the wheels that you saw from the last episode, we're going to go with those fast forward raw 55s. We're going to give these a test ride outside. We've got a 10 through to 46 tooth cassette, lovely lightweight one from a company called Zitto, and we've gone for a standard 160 millimeters front and rear. Now tires, I was really torn with tires. Essentially it came down to what I had in like the test pool of tires. So ideally, I think I would have preferred to have fit a 30 millimeters, but we had these 34 millimeter Goodyear Eagle F1s floating around. I do like these tires. I didn't expect to run a 34 millimeter on this, but the frame can take up to a 40 millimeter. So I thought, hey, let's give it a go. And of course, like I said, those fast forward raws from the last video, just because I think the whole shiny black carbon and silver finishing, it's gonna look stunning. Right, quick build, let's get out on the road. Right, time for a quick chat about what's so special about the geometry of this bike. Remember, it was born out of the concept from lots of bike fitters submitting all of their data to FiftyOne Bikes to create something which was the average of all of those bike fits. It was really born about those riders looking for a race bike experience, but not necessarily a race bike fit. So we all enjoy a really lively, exciting bike to ride, but not necessarily needing to do the sort of speeds that you're getting in Tour de France riders. However, if you are a competitive and enthusiastic cyclist, of course you want something light and exciting to ride, and that's what this is trying to be aimed at. Actual geometry is not as mental as I first thought, because I have to admit, when I first got it out of the box, it looked very compact and very tall, but when you actually compare it to other things on the market, it's not as bad as it first seems. I think the sloping top tube of this gives you a bit of a false illusion. So comparing this on a size large, which is what I am riding, and again, if you really have to drill down into the details on your size, having said that, when I was looking at the size charts, it does put me on either a large or an extra large, and I do believe that I would fit firmly between those two sizes, although I do think the large is the better choice for me at 182 centimeters. The big thing here is, initially I thought it was an endurance bike. If you compare it to something like a Trek Domane, a very traditional endurance bike, this is still longer and lower by quite some margin compared to the Trek Domane. In fact, about 13 millimeters, which is quite big in terms of bike fitting. Something like the Pinrallo Dogma X, perhaps. Again, this is still a lot racier than a Pinrallo Dogma X. But then if you look at something really racy, something like the Specialized SL8, then you get to see what we're looking at here, because the weight of this is not dissimilar, but the Specialized SL8 still comes in 5 millimeters longer, which is again fairly significant, but 13 millimeters lower. So we are somewhere in between an endurance bike and a race bike with this geometry. Compared to the other models that we offer here at Mapdec, let's say we compare it to a Look 785 Huez, that bike is still longer and higher than this bike. Interesting. It's very similar to the Time ADHX, although the ADHX is longer because of that wheelbase, and also quite a bit heavier as well because it's somewhere in between a road and a gravel bike. I had to, just out of interest, compare it to the geometry of the new Skylon. Yep, someone might have leaked that onto Geometry Geeks, and it's actually not that dissimilar to the Skylon. In fact, it's a few millimeters in it. although the Skylon does have slightly more racier geometry, but it's actually remarkably similar. So what can we learn from this? Well, I have to say that the marketing spiel on the FiftyOne bikes is actually quite accurate. Let me read it to you. The Sika is a cutting-edge road bike that delivers top-level performance in a package tailored for real riders, not for pros. It combines feathery lightness, high stiffness and sleek aero with a less extreme position, confident handling and clearance for 40mm tyres. It's the ride of your life all day long. In fact, all I have to say is what I've learned is I kind of agree with that statement. Right then, first impressions of the FiftyOne Sika is, well, it's a lot more nimble than I was expecting. I have to admit, I was expecting something like Giant Defy style handling. It's actually a lot nippier than that. In fact, one of the sort of flashbacks and memories is it reminds me a lot of my old Kendal Super 6 Evo, you know, the old rim brake ones. Stiff, nimble. It's not going to beat everybody's taste, especially when you consider the handling you might want from a endurance bike. But you've got a little background in racing and you like that sort of feeling of steering a nice curve around a corner, you're going to enjoy it. And that nimble handling also translates to the climbs. It does feel nice out of the saddle. Now this responsive handling does come with a bit of a drawback, and you can probably see I'm having to put in a lot more steering input than I'm used to try and maintain a straight line one-handed as I'm vlogging. Okay, at this point in the test ride, I am starting to wonder what type of rider this bike was actually designed for. You see, it is nimble and agile and the handling is sharp like a race bike, and yet the fit is more like an endurance bike. Now, this could be its killer feature or its downfall. I'm not entirely sure yet. I have to admit, actually having something that is nippy and exciting to ride, but at the same time still a little bit more forgiving, shall we say, it's probably not a bad thing. I think there's probably a lot of people watching this video who'll be like, actually that's just what I was looking for, thanks very much FiftyOne bike. I'm not quite sure how I've built this is the right thing. See, I've given it quite an endurance style build, and I'm starting to wonder whether I should have actually given it more of a racy type of build. It definitely climbs really nicely. It reminds me a bit of the look 785. It's got that slightly elevated front, but it has the advantage of actually being lighter. You are paying for that, but also more integrated, so it's a bit more like a fully integrated aero bike. Interesting. I mean, this amazing integrated handlebar and head tube all looks very aero bike. This fork looks a bit sort of endurance gravel bike. You know, the sloping top tube reminds me a bit more of a climbing bike, and the relatively short wheelbase and short stays actually make it feel a bit more like a racy climbing bike as well. So confused right now. Tyre clearance is insane on this. I mean, I've got 35 and like you could still fit a bus down there, and the back is just the same. I mean, by the way, these rear stays, aren't they pretty? Do like that as a feature. So look, loads and loads of tyre clearance, and down there as well you could easily get 40mm with room to spare. Quick look at this headset then. It's one of these sort of integrated proprietary top caps, which is a little bit frustrating because it doesn't give you an awful lot of scope for fitting handlebars from other brands. I'd prefer if it had a standard DCR or ACR type headset in there, because you're going to struggle to sort of get around this sort of recess. Now there is actually a little rubber flange in there to keep things waterproof, and it all looks very neat and tidy. And it does give you a few options as to where you want your handlebar height, but I think you'd struggle to find another compatible handlebar. So you want to know about ride, feel and compliance. Well, in all honesty, it rides like pretty much every good quality pre-preg frame on the market. So Pinrallo, Colnago, you're going to get a very similar ride feel. It feels plenty stiff enough, and to be honest, I'm getting more compliance out of these 35mm tyres run at like 60 psi than I am from the frame. The frame feels plenty stiff enough. Put some power down on the climbs and feel, you know, pretty confident that all my power is going into forward motion. It's not as confident in sort of the rough roads and the sort of the higher speed cornering as a time. I mean, those time bikes just feel so confidence inspiring, so steadfast. It's still not a patch on that, but it's very close. Here's the question though, does the FiftyOne Sika make it into the Mapdec stable of brands? Are we going to offer it to you, our customers, as an alternative to our current brands, look and time? Well, the answer to that is very much yes. I mean, the quality of this is insane. I've been really blown away by it. I think you will be too. It rides beautifully, and it also fills a gap because it rides similar to the Look 785, but it's significantly lighter and a whole lot more integrated. Hey, some people like that. I personally do. I love that whole integrated look. It has the advantage of being able to have wider tyres than the Tyre outdoors, and it's significantly lighter. If you go to the Time ADHX, yes, you get that tyre clearance back, but you also add in significant weight and significant stack height as well. So this still gives you a nice racy stiff bike at that lovely high quality, and I really do think it fits a gap in our range. Quick one on descending, it feels very nicely balanced. I don't feel like I'm having to overcompensate with my body position. It just feels like I'm in the middle of the bike. Very confident descender. Quick video sidebar, wouldn't it be amazing if you could come to our location and take bikes like this out for a ride in the fantastic Lake District location that we're in? That's what we're trying to achieve. We've just launched a crowdfunding campaign to try and get small donations from a big part of our audience to make sure we can expand our building and keep bikes like this and provide lots of other facilities for cyclists that have visited our location to really come and enjoy, hang out, plan routes and experience bikes like this. If you're interested, please go and check out the campaign. The link is below. Failing that, why not just hit that super thanks button, donate a small amount of money and help us build something really cool. I really hope you're enjoying this review so far, and if you are, please think about hitting that subscribe button and that like button. It really does mean the world to us. It means that we get noticed by brands like FiftyOne Bikes, who then send us cool stuff like this to review so that you guys can learn more about it from our channel. Okay then, with that all said, what are my final thoughts on this beautiful bike? One, there is no doubt about it that the build quality is exceptional. All these little components like the top cap just slot together. It really is a dream to build. When it comes to riding this bike, I can see how this bike evolved. So this bike really does represent the averages of all of those bike fits. And as such, this is a jack of all trades bike is the best way of describing it. It is sleek, it is aero like a race bike. It handles somewhere in between an endurance bike and a race bike. It's light, but not as light as a dedicated climbing bike like a Specialized Atheos. It's not far off. It's all aero and clean, but it doesn't have that forward and slightly more aggressive position of a real dedicated aero race bike. And it's a comfortable, moderate geometry, but with quite agile handling. And it's definitely stiff enough for its intended purpose, there's no doubt about that. It's okay at high speed, but there's definitely bikes in our range, like the Blade, like the Time bikes, which handle high speed descents a lot better. It's okay on rough roads, but we've got bikes in our range that are better at handling rough roads. And so to sum up, the Sika really is a jack of all trades bike, but it's probably the best jack of all trades bike that I've ever ridden. So if you can't decide between wanting a really lightweight, agile climbing bike or a fast aero race bike or a comfortable endurance bike, this probably represents the best compromise I've ever come across. And added to all of that, there's no doubt this thing is an absolute beauty.